Hey everyone, it's Giga. So recently, Konami decided to give Master Duel players a holiday gift right before the Duelist Cup in the form of the Runick archetype. The Runick archetype is composed of a powerful series of spells and fusion monsters that generally have three core functions. They can summon a Runick fusion monster to the extra monster zone, which usually will be getting you access to your broken field spell. A lot of them have control elements such as negating a monster effect, destroying a spell trap, and they also have banish effects, which banish cards in the opponent's deck. Runick was only really getting results in the TCG when mixed with Sprite and a control strategy, so it would be fine to release in Master Duel. It wouldn't cause problems, right? Well, wrong. With the lack of better options available, such as Sprite and Tier, along with the no side deck best of one format, this toxic mill strategy ran amok during the Duelist Cup with many different variations. In the Duelist Cup, people were forced to either main deck hate specifically for Runick, or were forced to play Runick themselves. Since Konami seemed to make changes to the ban list based on the last Duelist Cup, I decided to be a hero and play Runick myself so Konami can realize the sins that they have committed. So let's talk about this build in front of you. The most popular build of Runick was the Floodgate version, but instead I experimented with this monstrosity that, yes, is based off of a build that DK posted. This was mostly to have favorable matchup against those Floodgate Runick builds, since the Floodgates wouldn't do much to this deck. The original goal of the build DK posted is to draw most of your deck while doing some milling until you can access 1 day of peace, which will prevent you from losing. From there, you should be able to set up the field spell to draw 3 on your opponent's turn, mill them for half their deck, then you can repeat again on your turn until you can finish the job. I do add one more essential card that can also serve as your win condition in Steins. Going first, you don't always find 1 day of peace, so in that case, you can either just summon the Chariot Exterio or the Last Warrior from another planet. Usually see what's better after banishing some of your opponent's cards. Once you have locked them down, you can finish the milling job as normal. Going second, you can summon something like DPE to help pick apart boards if needed, or you can pick them apart with the Runick cards first, and then proceed to lock them down from following up. I think Cyberstein adds much needed firepower to the deck, and you have the added bonus of mixing your opponent up from reasoning since it's level 2. So with that, let's jump into the card by card. We're on 3 Cyber Valley, which is the bread and butter of this deck. It removes your Runick monster in the extra monster zone once you've used it up, bringing you up to summon more Runick fusions. It draws 2 cards, and can even recycle cards like 1 Day of Peace or Cyberstein if they happen to call 2 Unreasoning. We're on 1 Cyberstein, which we already covered in detail, which helps this deck violate the Geneva Convention. We're on 3 Upstart Goblins, 3 deck thinning essentially. We're on 3 Reasoning. While yes, this gets you access to Cyber Valley and Cyberstein, the more important function is actually just milling your Runick quick play spells, so you can draw a million cards with the field spell, even if you don't get to summon a monster off its effect. We're on 1 Terraforming, get your busted field spell or a chicken game. We're on 3 Monster Gate, which is pretty much just better reasoning in this deck because you always get the monster and you tribute for cost. You contribute a fusion monster in your extra monster zone to make room. We're on 1 Day of Peace. As mentioned before, this is kind of a win condition in this deck. We're on 2 Chicken Game. I was on 3. It does conflict with Cyberstein if you use all 3, although even when I was playing 3, I frequently didn't use all 3, but I think this is fine. I'm on 2 Runick Fountain. Honestly, I should probably just cut Terraforming or Runick Allure and play a 3rd copy, but I didn't have the points to craft the 3rd, and it didn't really come up often. This card is super busted. It recycles your Runick spells in grave and lets you draw cards. It's not a hard once per turn, meaning for every copy you have, you can use the effect again, and you can draw basically your whole deck. We're on 1 Runick Allure. I'm a bit undecided on this card. It helps you mill the opponent faster, but you can definitely mill them out without it. Its main utility, I would say, is in the mirror. But since the Floodgate version of Runick is the most common, and this deck already does well against that version of the deck, definitely cuttable. It can also be a liability against Branded. I lost a few times because of Masquerade, since its effect is mandatory, so you'll be taking 600, not only for your quick play spell, but for the mandatory activation of Runick Allure. That's something to be aware of. Next, we have the Runick quick play spells. So we're on 3 Tip, the Searcher of the deck. We're on 3 Flashing Fire. This pops a special summon monster. We're on 3 Runick Destruction. This pops a spell or trap card, essentially MST. We're on 3 Freezing Curses. It negates a monster effect, probably the best control tool that Runick has to offer. We're on 3 Slumber. It can protect a monster from destruction once, but its more important functionality is that it's activatable when you have a monster in your extra monster zone, even when going first, and that can come up somewhat frequently. We're on 2 Runick Smiting Storm. It's a milling machine, especially going second. We're also on 2 Runick Golden Droplet. It's similar in utility to Slumber, but it gives your opponent a draw. That can be good for milling, but usually you don't want to give your opponent an extra draw, so Slumber would be preferred in that situation. And finally, we're on 1 Dispelling. It's not too great. It can combo with Golden Droplet to help mill your opponent further and get a card out of their hand, but I really just need it for an extra name to special summon a Runick monster. Alright, and we're on to the extra deck. Run 3 copies of Hugin. This is the heart and soul of the deck, searches the field spell and protects it. And also note, it's not actually a once per turn effect, so even if it's negated, you can just try again, as long as you can get rid of it in your extra monster zone. We're on 2 immune in the Runick Wings. The targeting protection is her main use, as well as sometimes just wanting an extra name to banish off of Cyber Valley, and yes, sometimes you can search out Runick Allure as well. We're on 3 Jerry, the Runick Fangs. It's really the second heart and soul deck behind Hugin. It helps you recycle the field spell to use it many times in one turn. We're also on the one last warrior from their planet. As mentioned, this is Cyber Stein. You can lock down your opponent from summoning. Good against some matchups, such as Adamantipator, for example, where Naturia Exterior isn't going to really do much. We're on the 1 Sprint, the Iron Dash Dragon. This is mostly if they flip up cards like Rivalry of Warlords or Gozen Match against you in reaction to Cyber Stein, so you have something to summon, and it pops cards going second, so that's decent. DPE is like the better version of this, although it's a different type than Cyber Stein, so it doesn't work under Rivalry, but that's an option as well. Naturia Exterior is a busted-ass card that prevents your opponent essentially from using spells and traps. Make sure, though, you have enough cards in your deck to fuel his effect. That is something that has come up for me actually frequently, where you might actually run out of cards in your own deck to fuel his effect. We're on 1 Herald of Pure Light. This doesn't come too often, but sometimes it does, where you just need to get back by Cyber Valley or something. We're also on number 45, Crumble Logos. It negates any face-up card. Sometimes it comes up going second. We're also on the Phantom Knights of Cursed Javelin. Pretty much very similar function, except the only difference is that this only stops on monster effect, but it doesn't have to stay face-up on the field like Crumble Logos. Alrighty, so that's the deck list. Let's see the deck in action. Okay, so here's a duel I had in the Duelist Cup. This is a pretty good hand. I have several different Runick names here, as well as a Runick Slumber. I have Cyber Valley to help me get rid of a monster in the EMZ, as well as draw 2 cards. And I have Chicken Game. So something I want to note about Chicken Game, you'll see in this replay, sometimes it's better to hold Chicken Game because you want to get your value off of your field spell first, Runick Fountain, and then play Chicken Game and then recycle it that way. That's the way to get the best value off of Chicken Game. Some hands you can't really afford to do that, but that is something I want to note. So I'm going to use my Runick Dispelling, summon Hugin. Hugin's going to discard Freezing Curses to grab the field spell. Activate the field spell, activate Slumber, then we get to draw 3, as well as get to see what our opponent's on. So we get to see here our opponent's on Labyrinth, so we know Naturia Exterior will completely obliterate them. Here we activate Reasoning, they call 1. It was actually a pretty terrible mill. We didn't mill any quick play spells. We happen to draw into Runick Allure, so I fire that as well. And here you can see we're cycling. We Cyber Valley, draw 2, use Chicken Game, draw, keep drawing, drawing. Find 1 Day of Peace, that's an extra safety net, which is great. We're going to use Reasoning again, they call level 1. This time we're milling some quick play spells, which is much better, filling up our grave. This is exactly what we want to see, although we definitely don't want to get rid of all the Runick tips. That was a little unfortunate, but that's fine. Much more heftier mill, we only have 2 targets left in deck at this point. So we had a 50-50 chance of getting Cyber Stein. But I just immediately shotgun, go for Exterior, because I know, this pretty much wins us the game anyway. Recycling the field spell, drawing more cards. At this point you can see I only have 10 cards left in deck. But I made sure, I could, there might have been plays I could have made to keep going, but I'm just like, what's the point? I want to make sure I have cards in deck for Naturia Exterior, as I mentioned before. Here I shotgun just to make sure I have more interruption, just in case I want to draw as many cards as I can. And they're going to try to do some Labyrinth plays, realize they can't activate anything with Exterior on the board. I'll just negate it. And then they'll concede. There you go. That is this deck in a nutshell. So if you saw that demonstration and are thinking, hey, I want to keep other people from playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Too, but you're a bit concerned about the UR points, let's talk about some budget options. The Runick ratios have very little wiggle room. You could maybe cut Hugin or a Munin. I'd say Munin is a little bit more cuttable, but I wouldn't really recommend it. You could cut definitely the Upstart Goblins and Chicken Games. They make the deck a little bit more consistent, but it's definitely not needed. Could add in some staple cards such as Evenly Matched instead. But just make sure that if you are cutting these, that you add in cards that are not monsters, because they would interfere with with your reasoning / monster gate, so you wouldn't really be able to play hand traps. Cyberstein is technically cuttable too, especially considering DK was playing the deck without the Cyberstein engine at all. But then you have to rely more on 1 Day of Peace, and I didn't really like that too much. But it's definitely something to consider. Also, something I want to note is both Cyberstein and 1 Day of Peace are on the legacy packs. You do have a shot of getting them and getting some use out of those stupid legacy tickets. And finally, I'd say the last Ultra that you could consider cuttable is DPE. You definitely don't need it even if you're playing Cyberstein. So final thoughts, please Konami fix this. It's miserable to play against, and unfortunately it is quite good. Next time though, we'll be looking at mixing Runick with another archetype, which will hopefully make it a bit more based. As always, if you enjoyed the video, comment, like, subscribe. If you want additional updates or to chat about Master Duel, join my community Discord and link below, and I'll see you in the next one.